Hi, welcome to the Plat Valorant channel. Today we're going to do something that isn't quite the full podcast show. I've got Wyatt R with me, Mr. Wyatt Rivers, and we're going to go through some First Strike video previews. The idea of this being to give anybody that hasn't really been paying attention too much to the Valorant scene an idea of how to follow the top teams and really like what players to look out for, what styles of the teams are important. Like, what do you need to know about Sentinels? And obviously by the title of the video, you can tell that that is the team that we're going to start with here because I think it's indisputable at this point, right, Wyatt? They're the #1 team in North America.
Yeah. That is indisputable. Even I think for a while, I mean, I think they've been the best for quite some time. I've had them in #1 for essentially since their rise in the it was around midsummer where they really took off. If I remember correctly, the last time they didn't finish in a final was the first Pulse tournament, which happened months ago at this point. And since then, they've been in every single final and they've won the majority of them. So yeah, undisputed. They are the best team. And it's an interesting team in terms of course, the storylines of the individual players, right? Like where they came from, their histories before the game. I mean, specifically, everybody always goes back to Sinatraa. I mean,
Yeah.
At this point, it's the storyline that has been rehashed and discussed ad infinitum, but let's do it again. I mean, everybody knows he was the Overwatch League champion for the San Francisco Shock.
Yeah.
And then mid-season of this ongoing Overwatch League season, he decided to step down from the team, step down from the opportunity to be a back-to-back, not only Overwatch League winner, but MVP, right? So
yeah.
Very, very big move. Really unprecedented move in esports. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this.
Yeah, and it hasn't really... There hasn't been anything like this that followed either. That, as far as I can remember, there haven't been any other CSGO players, for example, who are in a position where they were like MVP caliber players that have moved over to Valorant. It's normally been people who are rising in the scene or people who had their peak already and are looking for a different place to kind of re-peak in another title. Whereas Sinatraa was genuinely at the top of the scene. I mean, you'll maybe have some shitty Overwatch fans who'll tell you, oh, he wouldn't have been as good this year because his heroes weren't in the meta or whatever. That's bollocks. Sinatra's the kind of player that would be able to pick up any character that was required of him, and that has translated in this game as well, Wyatt. That's what I love to watch Sinatraa so much for in Valorant, is that not only is he a great player in both titles, but his style has very much come through into Valorant as well. In Overwatch, he was known as a player that was very aggressive, loved to get up in your face. His decisions per second were very high. Like, he was always trying to be active. He was always a very active playmaking kind of dude. And in Valorant, it's just taken that style to the next level because he can have a more individual impact rather than being, in some sense, like shackled by the team aspect of Overwatch, where everything you do has to feed into a teamwork component. In this game, he can take that and not only play for his team, but play some insane individual stuff as well.
Yeah, and lest we forget, some people, as we were kind of saying, this is leading into First Strike, the big first Riot tournament, etc. For people who are new, if they're just looking at the NA scene, Sinatraa is got to be in like your top 3 players NA right now, at least, I think.
Yeah.
If not arguing for him to be in the #1 slot, maybe #2. That's neither here nor there. That's for a different speculative video.
Sure.
But for this, for the people who are new, if you go back to the beginning of the NA tournament scene in Valorant, Sinatraa did not look anything like the player he is now. He has made significant strides in terms of his gameplay. And I think the most notable thing to me is that I just have these images stuck in my mind of him playing Phoenix on Haven from months ago, where his timings, his pushes were just so overly aggressive. The timings were off. Him just running down mid, taking it too far, going through the window. But over those few months that have led us to where we are now, where they're just tournament winners, he's made such strides in terms of reining back that aggression, where it's far more calculated, yet it never lost that sort of fearless element. He's still the most selfless entry fragger in NA to me
in the
right
world
now.
as well. That's like, you don't even have to just talk about him in the context of North America. He's also the caliber of player that would be at the elite level in any scene around, at least as far as we can tell right now.
Absolutely.
He has the aim to be able to go alongside it. Like, something that I think new players will love watching Sinatraa for is that he plays the entry style how you would want your teammates to play entry in ranked. He will just run in and create that space for you. But unlike in CS, where so often you'll have entry players whose stats get hurt because, of course, you're running around the corner first. You're kind of supposed to do a bit of damage and then die, and then the second player is supposed to clean up the kill. That's like the theory of trading. That's how the CS style theory has worked out. But Sinatraa kind of takes that and just flips it on his head, because he's able to go in there and effectively trade out. He does enough damage in the round to... He's averaging about 150 damage per round in recent tournaments, which is just insane when you're playing the entry. That means you are, in most circumstances, getting a kill and a little bit more every time you are dry pushing into a site. The burden that relieves from the rest of his team is enormous.
Yeah, it's astounding how many games he'll have. One always comes to mind, a recent one, and I think you'll remember this one too. It was that bind match where he was Phoenix against Immortals, and he just runs it into B, completely fearless. He's exclusively playing in a way to set up his second or third man coming in, which is always going to be SicK and Dapr, to get those trades. But he's just so skilled that there will be games he just gets all of the kills opening up a bomb site, and then he'll leave with some crazy stats. I think in that match specifically, it was like 32 and 14, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. But I know he was at least 30 kills, which is just insane, and especially for that role. It's just so impressive. And it's been so cool to watch him grow in terms of his game sense over these past few months. And a lot of that has to be credited to the sort of overall mix of this team in terms of where the players came from, right? Having Sinatraa, this ex-Overwatch guy, Zombs from a various different titles, and then this core of established CSGO NA pros who are able to instill good values into him as they played over time and practiced over time.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting component as well, because Sentinels, when they first started, looked like a ramshackle team that was really lacking that... okay, so for the important context, the first time that they played, they didn't have their full roster. They played with without Dapr. I think they were playing with... who were they playing with?
Crashies, I think? I could be wrong.
I don't think it was Crashies.
I remember Crashy was supposed to be playing with them very early on.
Potentially then. But yeah, they looked like they were really lacking the synergy. And apparently at the time, they hadn't really scrimmed together. They hadn't really put the time in on the server to be able to figure out what they were doing. They were just playing on stream, basically. They were just playing ranked together. And as soon as they put in that work, that effort, they immediately became top level. I mean, it was a dramatic improvement. Actually, I suppose it would be unfair to say they immediately became top level, because in the next tournament, I think they ended up losing to FaZe, but they made like a run and ended 5th in a tournament, something like that. But it took them a very short period of time for them to ascend from being a team that looked like they were pretty lost to a very well-oiled machine. Everyone has a good role. There's a mix of different backgrounds, so they're all bringing something new. Like, for example, Sinatra's utility usage is fantastic, and the way that he moves around the map is fantastic. Dapr's movement is also really good, something that I think is underrated overall in Valorant. You know, Shazam's AWPing is very good, but he also is able to play a bunch of duelists, which isn't something that you see overall in NA. They're a very well-rounded team.
They are so well-rounded, and to me, that is the reason why they are number one. It's all 5 players are active in the server, if that makes sense. They are all present in the server. They all have impact. And past that, all of them are so versatile that depending on the map they're playing, they can have their players, specifically their duelists, Sinatraa, Shazam, play the best agents for those maps, and they're good on all those agents. They're not forcing it. They're not trying to play the agents because they're good on the maps, but they don't actually necessarily have the requisite skills to play the agent well. No. They're good on all the agents, so they're able to play them map by map dependent, which just puts them immediately on a bit of a different level than the rest of the competition. It's not something that you're able to see a lot of the other teams pull off. But yeah, Sinatraa and Shazam are just two of the most versatile duelists in NA right now. And Shazam is just such a well-rounded player all around. I mean, he can play the AWPing Jett, which is obviously a popular and necessary agent on plenty of maps and in plenty of scenarios. But he's also just so good on the Breach. He'll go on to the Sova as well. And Breach, of course, is going to be relevant in this meta more
Certainly
so than we've
seems
seen
like
in
it.
the past few months,
Yeah.
right? And he's one of the best breaches in NA. And aside from all that, he's leading the team. He's an incredibly versatile player. And I this is a point I had made previously, but I do think that he is one of the more underrated players in NA in terms of how much he offers to this team.
Sure. I think it bears kind of going through the style of the team overall. They're a very aggressive team, I think. Sentinels love to get up in your face. They're not going to rely on a pick-based style that often. They're going to try and entry into locations, utilizing Sinatraa, whether he's on the Phoenix when they play Bind, the Rays when they play Split, and also sometimes on Bind, or even the Sova when they play something like Haven. He can still play a bit of an entry style on there where he'll find picks or apply pressure on the map because he's being able to spam locations and find people with his recon arrows so effectively. And so they don't really play like a lot of the other NA teams, I would say. It's not that they're super tactical like Gen.G, but they're not very default AWP pick based like TSM either. They play like a more almost like classic Counter-Strike-y style of going for engages onto sites behind this big entry guy, but their utility usage is also very good to be able to supplement that.
Yeah, and it's the support system around their star entryer as well. It's having Dapr and SicK, who individually, in terms of their level of consistency, it's just so high. So you have these two excellent players that are always going to be there to support their entryer on these pushes. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, they're just good at pressuring areas on the map, oftentimes just hitting full sites. I mean, it's something you see on Bind, to go back to that map, very often. They will just execute onto B fairly early into the round in a very similar way. Sinatraa going out of hookah, you have Dapr and long, SicK trading from hookah, and then Shazam and Zombs will be heading up the rear. And it is something they'll do so frequently, and it's often an execute they'll pull out within the first 40 seconds of a round.
Yeah.
They definitely like to play that fast style.
And what I think I really appreciate about them as well is that, well, you might say, well, okay, they're trying to execute out a hookah within the first 40 seconds. How do they take hookah? Doesn't that normally take some time? But they have very set plans on how they take map control, but they're not afraid of taking the duels if it's offered to them. So for example, Dapr will come out of sand, he'll put up his cam to be able to scout hookah to see if anyone's holding close, but they'll always be moving forward the whole time. Other teams you'll see, like FPX over in Europe, for example, or Liquid, will very slowly take that map control to give themselves the best duels possible as they slowly take territory on the map. Whereas I feel like Sentinels are much faster at taking that map control because they feel more confident in taking the aim duels. Like if there happens to be a player there, they're just going to trade that kill out. Like they're just going to have someone run into the guy, and if they don't manage to get the kill, well, SicK or Dapr will be there to be able to trade it anyway. And so you've traded one for one, and you've gained that map control, and they value the speed of the map control more so than giving themselves the absolute perfect aim duels possible.
Yeah, I think another great map example to sort of add on to what you were just saying there is their split attack. If you look at the way that Sinatraa, when he's on the Rays, you have Dapr on the Cypher, that duo will just open up A or find kills up in heaven. They'll just smoke the cross over on A. They'll push over into heaven with that duo, and they'll either be setting up to trade each other out, or they'll just be gaining an immense amount of map control. It's so much pressure that those two players are able to put onto one location on the map. And they do it so aggressively as well. There is no hesitation with it. It is this duo up in heaven. And the way that that's able to, of course, then also draw players from other areas of the map, focus their attention there. So mid is easier to potentially push up, such a crucial area on split for the other three guys. It's just such a quick, aggressive, and just such a fearless way of playing, which is really what makes their style so engaging to watch. It's what
Yeah.
makes them such an entertaining, explosive team.
I think they're the most fun team to watch in North America. Like, I enjoy watching Gen.G and their tactics and this kind of stuff. And Wardell, you cannot doubt how amazing he is to watch when he pulls magic out with the op. We'll see whether he's really able to do that in First Strike after the op nerfs. But for me, Sentinels are the most fun team to watch. They're just so active at all times. They are dynamic with the way that they play. It really is beautiful to watch. Now let's focus in, I think, a little bit on Dapr and SicK, because we've mentioned them a little bit before about being the support structure of this team. Dapr, to me, has a pretty strong argument for being the best Cypher in the world in terms of how he utilizes his utility, how he works the map, especially when you watch him on Split and the way that he puts pressure on the A side with or without Sinatraa. And then the fact that he's also got the fragging to be able to back that, which a lot of the other ciphers in North America don't particularly have, because I feel like it comes across as the like fifth role that people fill in North America. Over in Europe, there's some very good fraggers on those kind of roles, like Meadow and Pith, but specifically in North America, Dapr stands almost head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. To me, SicK and Dapr are absolutely the foundation of this team. I mentioned their consistency before, but it's so high. They're so reliable, and both of them are so sick in clutches. It's actually absurd. I remember going back because I was editing a video about Sentinels, and I was looking for clips of them clutching. I had like 20 clips. It's actually ridiculous. They have so many on-stream clutches, but they're both so intelligent in those situations, and they're just set up perfectly for it. I mean, Cypher is the perfect clutch role, which is why it is a bit silly that it is often in NA. It is, a little bit just like the fifth man. Like, who else do we have on the team? All right, just throw his ass on Cypher. That's fine. But it is such a pivotal role in the post-plant scenarios. And that's where Dapr shines. And that's where SicK shines as well. He can come in as the second man. He was playing Sage really often. So I think an interesting storyline heading into First Strike is, what is SicK actually going to be playing here? Because he was essentially a 24/7 Sage up until the very end of the Sentinels run that we saw, where he was playing Phoenix on Haven. He was always on Sage. So what is he going to play moving forward? That is an interesting question, one that I'm excited to see answered. And I want to see if he's as versatile as the other players on the team. But I find that those two share a lot of the same skills. And to me, they're, in a lot of ways, some of the most crucial components of Sentinels.
Let's narrow in on SicK a little bit then here, because I think a lot of people would consider him to be the best Sage in North America. Whenever I watch SicK, I think immediately what strikes me is fantastic second man to be able to capitalize on what Sinatraa does, very similar to Dapr. Fantastic in the clutch, which is very similar to Dapr as well. I'm not really convinced. So to set the context, SicK has got 82 games played of Sage and 6 of Phoenix. He really loves to stick on the Sage. In North America, a lot of people were moving away from Sage being played, but SicK was not one of them. He's a little bit like your Link over on Liquid in Europe, even though Link has actually started to deviate away from the Sage after the nerf. Obviously, as most people will. David P as well, who's played just an enormous amount of Sage, but has started to deviate away. The difference for me is, when I watch David P and Link over in Europe, I feel like their utility usage and their awareness of how to get the most out of Sage's kit is enormously powerful, and is the biggest part of why they're such incredible players. For SicK, it feels like it's more his ability to play the game, and he doesn't rely on the Sage utility that much. His utility usage is pretty good, but it doesn't blow me away in the same way that a David P or a Link does. It's more his gun skill and his positioning and timing with his gun rather than the Sage itself. So perhaps that's a positive as he starts to move away from Sage.
Yeah, I would certainly see that as a positive as well. And I think they're with, I mean, not to get too far into speculation, but obviously there's going to be a new agent in the game very soon, Skye. There are other agents that are relevant in the meta now that are looking to still be that second man trading role where he can still slot in, and his skill set is really, going to be used the most in that role, right? So I think there will be other roles that he can just slot in there and he'll be fine. Yeah, I can certainly remember he's had some moments of brilliance with the Sage utility. Often, again, just coming in the clutch situations, just some very intelligent wall usage where he would place a wall somewhere to bait as if he was holding a certain angle, but he wasn't. He would actually be rotating around the map. He's had some brilliant moments, but yeah, I would tend to agree with you overall that his utility usage is certainly not the highlight of his skill set. But I don't foresee him having issues as I would agree as well that his gun skill, his timing, his trading, and his clutching are all just so on the top. They're all on the top level that I
Yeah.
can't really imagine him having a problem slotting into any other agent that can just fulfill the same roles in terms of where he's going to be on the map and things like that.
So Sentinels won, I believe, 2 of the Ignition tournaments. They won the FaZe Clan Invitational and they won Pop Flash, right? Those were the big ones that they won. Now, they also had other tournaments that they won that were like as notable as any Ignition tournaments.
The FaZe was the TSM loss, the close TSM loss.
Oh, sorry, it was. Yeah, they came second in that. Right. They won the PAX Arena. That was the other Ignition tournament that they won.
Yeah.
Now, they also won the 30 Bomb Summer Cup, again, beating TSM in the upper bracket and then in the final there as well, I think. And then they came third in the Pulse Invitational before that. This is a team that, in terms of their successes in like the amount of gold medals they have, I suppose, the amount of trophies they have, is pretty even with TSM. There is an active rivalry for which team is going to be able to compete against that. How do you see this working into First Strike? You've got TSM who've got an AWP nerf. You've got Sentinels who've got a Sage nerf that they still haven't really shown us how they're going to deal with, even though that was a little further longer ago. They've also got, this grueling BO1 bracket to be able to get through, presumably. There haven't been any details announced of North America's system, but we can assume it's going to be something similar to like Brazil and Europe and Korea. How do you see this rivalry playing out in First Strike?
Well, the reason I rate Sentinels so highly, as I mentioned before, is their versatility and their deep agent pools. And the thing is, we're playing Valorant. It's a new game. There's a lot of updates. There's going to be new agents. There's going to be new maps. There are going to be ability changes very frequently. This is to be expected. And because of the way that they're able to play right now, which is playing a multitude of agents to which are best served on each individual map, their players are able to switch constantly. Crucially, their duelists are able to switch agents constantly. I see them as a team that will be able to survive meta shifts. And I think that's going to be such a crucial skill for a team to have in this game. I mean, it's obviously the direct comparison is, of course, always going to be to CS, a game that sees little to no updates, specifically in terms of actual meta shifts. That does not happen. This is it's going to be happening very frequently in Valorant, and a team that'll be able to survive that and in fact, I think thrive in those shifts where other teams might be struggling to figure things out. I think it's always going to keep them ahead of the curve. And Sinatraa is such a big reason for that. His ability usage is just A1. And I just can't imagine a future where if a new duelist agent comes out, he wouldn't be able to just pick it up and be one of the best with the abilities in a short period of time. I expect Shazam to be able to really play any agent they need as well. It's just such a crucial skill to have in a game like this, right?
Yep.
And I think the issue with TSM is that so far, while they have shown moments of greatness, winning the FaZe Invitational, obviously Wardell is an incredible AWPer, it has been sporadic. They have had large swings. That is just a fact at this point. Their Pop Flash showing, very lackluster. The notorious double BO3 loss to Dignitas is definitely looming over their legacy at the moment, right? And even previous to that, they had won the FaZe Invitational, but that was after a stretch of, I want to say, 3, maybe 4 poor tournament showings. And, that came off of the back of their initial win, which was the Nerd Street Gamers, the first Ignition event. And within that time, in terms of at least their compositional structure, they have not changed much. Their only real change midway through the Ignition series was to get Wardell on Jett 24/7. That is the real change that they made. And it worked because his Jett is unbelievably good. But yeah, they they have not shown enough willingness to change or versatility, maybe because they haven't had to, but they haven't shown it. So it's hard to imagine that they're going to be in a better space than Sentinels moving forward, right?
Yeah, something that I'd like to bring up here as well, when you're talking about kind of versatility, is that we know the individual players are versatile over on the Sentinels. What's interesting is when you look at their map statistics, they play the same comps over and over and over on the maps. Now, the exception to this is Haven, where it was by far and away their weakest map, and it took them a long time to iterate on what comp they felt comfortable with across. Basically, it was like one big long patch essentially, but it was multiple different iterations of North American metas as Sova came in and then Sage came out and that kind of stuff. But outside of Haven, I mean, you look at Bind, the majority of the time, 18 times out of, well, let me do some quick maths here, 25, they've been playing this this Phoenix Sinatraa game. Now, another 4 of those times they've played Sinatraa on the Raze, which is a very similar kind of composition. You see the Brimstone coming in there as well. That's a little unique when it comes to North American Valorant. Split, 17 times they've played the same composition, which is the same one that G2 plays. It's just such a great versatile comp on that map, and they're just incredibly good at Split, the best team in North America on that map. And Ascent, they've only ever played one composition on Ascent, and they've just won with it, like the vast majority of the time. This is a team that finds a style that works well for them and generally speaking sticks with it, but if it doesn't work, like it didn't with Haven, they're willing to make iterations every time they play it and try and adapt and see what works, and then until once they find something that works, they'll run with that, as they have done recently. The other point about this too is that their win percentage on these maps is outrageously high. They don't have a weak map. It would be Haven if they had one, but they fixed it recently. They shored it up within the last 2 tournaments, and it's still sat at a 61% win percentage, which is incredibly good. You look across the rest of their map pool, Bind, their most played map, 71% win percentage. It's super dangerous playing against Sinatra's Phoenix on that map. Split, they're the best team in North America. It's at 83% with a 61% attack round win rate, which is bonkers considering. I think the normal stats are something like I think it's something like a 42 or 45% attack rate, something around there. I'm not 100% sure. And Ascent is statistically their best map as well, even though I would say it's actually Split. And they're just insanely good over there with Shazam on the breach. It becomes very hard to argue that they would be caught off guard by some team in a BO1. Okay, it's a BO1, inconsistencies can happen, but their map pool is very well structured, well thought out. You can't catch them off guard by picking a weird map into them. They're very well-rounded in terms of their team. They can play all of the agents. They can adapt. They are a very well-rounded, consistent team across every metric.
Yeah, that the storyline of their Haven improvement is actually very cool because it happened while they were rated as the best team. They were winning every tournament, yet still, tournament by tournament, they were struggling on Haven, and you saw them every time change their comp. They were trying something new every single time. They never rested on the fact that they were number 1 and they were winning anyway. They still improved to the point where now they have the best map pool in NA as well. Yeah, they're good on every single map, which is already a leg up over the competition, because I struggle to think of any other team, probably because there isn't one, that is genuinely really good on all 4 maps.
Yeah.
And with a new map also going to be added to the game very shortly within the next, I mean, this is going up on the 9th, so in 4 days, there's going to be a new map in the game for these teams to begin practicing. It's not like Sentinels really have much to refine on any of the other ones, so they can just go hard on learning this new map. I would fully imagine that they'll be able to have a full 5-map pool and just extend the lead in terms of their maps over the other teams from that.
Yeah, and even though they will have to iterate a little bit on the other maps, probably to replace Sage on like Bind and Split, for example, although, you know, who knows whether SicK is going to do that. It seems likely, but we've seen David P run Sage still on Ascent, so some teams might still stick to it. But yeah, they will need to make some compositional change, but the reason that we feel confident about Sentinels to do that is that they've already showcased that ability on Haven. The reason that they are sticking to these other compositions on the other maps is not because they are tactically rigid or unwilling to be creative. They're just winning, and you don't change what's winning. So there's nothing to be worried about here in terms of the Sentinels gameplay. What's your quickly, because I need to wrap this up, Wyatt, because I've got to go to a rehearsal for the Overwatch League. What do you think are the reasonable expectations for them in First Strike? And what would be considered a disappointment for them?
I think that they should win First Strike. And I think if they come in second, that's not an unreasonable disappointment. If they don't make the finals, I would be very surprised. That's when it's a real disappointment. I think if they just make the semis, I just don't think there's enough competition in NA right now, established competition, for them to not be making the finals of this tournament. Yeah.
They're such an incredible team. They're essentially, I mean, in terms of their playstyle and the heroes that they like to play and that kind of stuff, they're a fairly decent comparison to a team like G2 that's over in Europe. Yeah. Don't have the same domination over the region because they do have an active rivalry with TSM. But they've got to be your favorites to take it over in North America. They're an incredibly exciting team to watch as well. I would thoroughly recommend anybody who's a fan of Sinatraa coming from Overwatch, Zombs coming from Apex or any of the other games that he's played in the past, Shazam or any of the other guys that have come from CS, or hell, even if you're just a fan of aggressive Valorant being taken to its top level, Sentinels are the team for you in North America. They're so fun to watch.
Absolutely. And quick note, we didn't really say much about Zombs, but one thing I never see that I actually recently learned, because one of our new roommates lived with the Sentinels house.
Oh, really?
He told me that Zombs actually put the team together, which I did not know. I don't think that's real public knowledge. I don't know, I'm just spilling insider info here. But but you got to give the guy some credit. I mean, he put together a sick team. He was the one who recruited these guys. And also, individually, he's been looking far better as time has gone on. I mean, he's a really explosive aimer. He is a exciting player to watch in terms of what he can just mechanically pull off.
Yeah, people really like to downplay Zombs' impact in this team, and he does, I believe, have the lowest kill per round of any of the players. He normally plays quite a supportive style. He's not really the second man in. He's more like setting up people with the flashes, just holding down one area, anchoring a site, whether that's A on split or even A on bind, and just sitting there and doing his job if you run into him. But he's still good for multi-kills whenever you hit his site. And he's an important component of this team. Is he the best player on the roster? No, I don't think so. But he's still an important key component of what makes the Sentinels work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Yeah,
and I had no idea that he built the team as well, so that is really cool.
Yeah, I just learned that, and I thought that was I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, because I don't think that is a point that has really been discussed, at least not that I've seen. But yeah, it's nice to see him improving. And yeah, he is so good at anchoring. His multi-kill percentage seems to be very high, and oftentimes it comes from he will get the first kill, and the second one, he will often just hit some ridiculous shot that will get his team that second frag to allow them to be in a 4v3 retake, which is very crucial.
Yep. Okay, so that is everything you need to know about Sentinels heading into First Strike. If you want to see more of this team, you can go and catch some of their VODs from the previous tournaments, like Pop Flash, where they won, or even those amazing TSM rivalry matches, like the end of the FaZe Clan Invitational or PAX Arena. You can also catch them streaming, too. I think Sinatraa streams very regularly for a few thousand viewers. Shazam does as well, I believe. And Dapr has started putting out some kind of educational videos as well, explaining some of his movement, because it's quite unique. Sinatraa and Dapr have some of the best movement in the entire game, and it's very different to CS style movement. It's not very different, but it does have like niche quirks that you can really maximize to become a better player. So if that's something that interests you, you can check out those channels as well. We're going to be putting out more First Strike preview videos of all of the top teams. This is our first one on Sentinels. We're going to be following it with one about G2, and we're going to run through a bunch of different top teams from all around the scene, including Korea. We might do Japan with Jupiter as well, and some teams from Brazil as well. So if you're interested in the scenes and want to learn more about a variety of different top teams, around the Valorant industry, don't bother watching VODs. Let us do the hard work and we'll tell you everything you need to know.